Before we start, just a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. Only 2% are subscribers. At 2,000 subscribers, I'll be posting a special video. John Dawson's head throbbed painfully as he regained consciousness, the bright, sterile light of the Galactic jail searing his eyes. His entire body ached, and his limbs felt unnaturally heavy. He tried to push himself up, but was immediately met with a rough shove from behind, sending him sprawling back onto the cold metallic floor. "Get up, human," a harsh voice commanded. John squinted up at the source, two towering Thraxar guards with bulbous eyes and a cold, emotionless demeanor. The one who had spoken glared down at him with evident disdain, while the other watched with a mixture of curiosity and contempt. John struggled to his feet, the Thraxar's grip tight on his arm, propelling him forward. His mind raced, trying to piece together how he had ended up in this predicament. The last thing he remembered was being ambushed during a mission on a remote planet. Now, he was a prisoner, surrounded by alien faces and cold steel. The guards led him down a long, dimly lit corridor lined with cells. The occupants of these cells, an eclectic mix of alien species, regarded him with a range of emotions from pity to amusement. John met their gazes with a mix of defiance and caution, aware that showing any sign of weakness could be dangerous. They reached a cell at the end of the corridor. With a rough push, the guards shoved John inside, the door slamming shut with a resonant clang that echoed through the hall. John stood there, breathing heavily, as he surveyed his new environment. The cell was small and bare, with a single cot and a dim light that cast eerie shadows on the walls. Exhausted, he collapsed onto the cot, trying to process his situation. The Thraxar were known for their brutal treatment of prisoners, and John knew he had to be on guard at all times. He couldn't afford to show any sign of vulnerability. As the hours dragged on, the silence of the cell was broken only by the occasional distant sounds of other inmates and the heavy footsteps of patrolling guards. John's thoughts drifted to his team, wondering if any of them had been captured or if they had managed to escape. He had to find a way to contact them, to let them know he was still alive. Morning came too quickly, and with it, a harsh awakening. The cell door creaked open, and John was yanked out by the same Thraxar guards. They marched him to the mess hall, where he was handed a mop and bucket. The message was clear. He was expected to clean. John began his task, scrubbing the floors while the other inmates watched. It didn't take long for the first taunts to start. A group of aliens led by a particularly large and intimidating creature named Korg approached him. Korg's reptilian features twisted into a mocking grin as he loomed over John. "Well, look at this," Korg sneered. "A human janitor. How fitting." John continued scrubbing, refusing to acknowledge the taunts. Korg wasn't deterred. He stepped closer, kicking over the bucket of soapy water, spilling it across the floor John had just cleaned. "I'm talking to you, human," Korg growled, his voice filled with malice. The other inmates laughed, enjoying the spectacle. John straightened up, meeting Korg's gaze with calm determination. "Find someone else to entertain you," he said evenly, his eyes never leaving Korg's. For a moment there was a tense silence. Then, with a sudden movement, Korg grabbed the mop from John's hands and snapped it in half, the loud crack echoing through the mess hall. He threw the broken pieces at John's feet and walked away, the other inmates following, still laughing. John clenched his fists, the rage boiling inside him, but he forced himself to remain calm. He knew he couldn't afford to lose control. This was just the beginning, and he needed to stay focused if he wanted to survive and find a way out of this hellish place. The days passed slowly, each one blending into the next. The routine was monotonous and grueling, with the Thraxar guards overseeing every aspect of their lives with ruthless efficiency. John learned to navigate the unspoken rules of the prison, avoiding unnecessary confrontations while keeping a watchful eye on everything around him. He began to observe the other prisoners, noting their routines, their alliances, and their vulnerabilities. He needed information, and he needed allies. The Thraxar might have been confident in their control, but John knew that every prison had its weaknesses. He just had to find them. One night, as he lay on the hard cot staring at the ceiling, John's mind raced with plans and possibilities. He refused to accept this as his fate. There had to be a way to escape, to fight back against his captors and reclaim his freedom. He wouldn't let the Thraxar break him. He wouldn't give them the satisfaction. John Dawson was a soldier, and he was determined to win this battle, no matter the odds. The cell door creaked open the next morning, rousing John from a fitful sleep. The Thraxar guards yanked him out, their grip unrelenting. They shoved him into a line of prisoners, each one looking just as weary and downtrodden as he felt. The guards barked orders in their guttural language, pushing the prisoners forward. Today's task was to clean the mess hall, a vast, grimy space that reeked of alien food and unwashed bodies. John picked up a mop and bucket, trying to blend in and avoid drawing attention to himself. As he scrubbed the floors, he could feel the eyes of the other inmates on him, sizing him up, judging him. He focused on his task, ignoring the whispers and snickers that followed him. It wasn't long before a group of aliens approached him. At their head was Korg, the large, intimidating creature who had mocked him the previous day. Korg's reptilian face twisted into a sneer as he watched John work. "Hey, human," Korg called out, his voice dripping with disdain. "Cleaning up our mess, are you? How noble." John kept his head down, continuing to scrub. He knew engaging with Korg would only lead to more trouble, and he wasn't in the mood for a confrontation. But Korg wasn't deterred by John's silence. He stepped closer, his large frame casting a shadow over John. "I asked you a question, human," he growled, his tone menacing. John straightened up, meeting Korg's gaze. "I'm just doing my job," he said evenly, refusing to back down. Korg's eyes narrowed, and he took another step forward, his presence overwhelming. "Your job is to entertain us," he said, a cruel smile playing on his lips. "And right now you're failing miserably." The other inmates laughed, their voices a chorus of mockery. Korg reached out, knocking the bucket of soapy water over with a swift kick. The water spread across the floor, undoing all of John's hard work. John felt a surge of anger, but he forced himself to stay calm. He couldn't afford to lose control, not here, not now. He took a deep breath, bending down to pick up the bucket. Korg wasn't done. He grabbed the mop from John's hands and snapped it in half with a single motion. "Look at that," he said, tossing the broken pieces aside. "Useless, just like you." John's fists clenched at his sides, the rage boiling inside him. But he knew he couldn't fight back, not yet. He had to bide his time, gather his strength, and find a way to turn the tables. The guards watched from the sidelines, their expressions unreadable. They made no move to intervene, seeming to enjoy the spectacle. John met their eyes, seeing the cold amusement there. He knew he couldn't count on them for any help. He was on his own. Korg and his cronies eventually lost interest, moving on to torment someone else. John was left alone in the mess hall, surrounded by the remains of his shattered mop and the spilled water. He took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. This was just the beginning, and he had to stay strong. As he cleaned up the mess, John's mind raced with plans and possibilities. He needed to find allies, people he could trust, and gather information about the prison's layout and routines. He had to be smart, cautious, and above all, patient. The day dragged on, each hour blending into the next. The Thraxar guards kept a close watch on the prisoners, their presence a constant reminder of the danger that lurked around every corner. John did his best to keep his head down, observing everything and everyone around him. That night, as he lay on his cot, staring at the ceiling, John felt a flicker of hope. He had survived another day, and with each passing moment he grew stronger, more determined. He wouldn't let Korg or the Thraxar break him. He had come too far, endured too much to give up now. John Dawson was a survivor, and he would find a way to escape this hellish place. He just had to stay focused, stay strong, and never lose sight of his goal. The Thraxar might have underestimated him, but they would soon learn that he was not someone to be trifled with. As the lights dimmed and the prison fell into an uneasy silence, John made a promise to himself. He would endure whatever it took, overcome any obstacle, and seize any opportunity that came his way. And when the time was right, he would make his move. He would fight back, and he would win. The routine of Galactic jail settled into a grim pattern for John. Each day was a struggle against both the harsh conditions imposed by the Thraxar guards and the relentless bullying from other inmates, especially Korg. Despite the physical and mental toll, John remained resolute, his military training instilling in him a deep-seated discipline and endurance. He kept his head down, observing and learning, waiting for the right moment to turn the tide. One particularly brutal day, John found himself assigned to clean the lower maintenance levels of the jail, a place where the filth and grime were almost unbearable. The air was thick with the stench of industrial waste, and the dim lighting made the already oppressive environment even more dismal. As he worked, he felt a familiar presence behind him. Korg and his gang had come to harass him again. "Look who it is, our favorite janitor," Korg taunted, his voice echoing off the metal walls. "I bet you wish you were back on your little human planet, don't you?" John ignored him, focusing on scrubbing a particularly stubborn stain. His silence only seemed to enrage Korg further. The large alien stepped forward, grabbing John by the collar and lifting him off his feet. "I'm talking to you, human!" John's patience snapped. He had endured weeks of torment, and the constant physical and verbal abuse had pushed him to his limit. With a swift, practiced movement, he brought his knee up into Korg's midsection. The alien grunted in surprise, dropping John to the floor. Seizing the moment, John followed up with a punch to Korg's jaw, sending him stumbling backward. The room fell silent as the other inmates watched in shock. No one had ever dared to stand up to Korg like this. John stood his ground, his fists clenched and his eyes blazing with defiance. "I've had enough of you," he said, his voice steady and filled with determination. Korg recovered quickly, his face contorted with rage. He charged at John, but this time John was ready. Using the agility and combat skills honed from years of military service, he sidestepped Korg's attack and delivered a series of precise blows to the alien's pressure points. Korg roared in pain and frustration, but John was relentless, refusing to back down. The fight was intense and brutal, with neither side willing to give an inch. John's determination and strategic thinking gave him the edge, and he soon had Korg on the defensive. With a final, powerful strike, he sent the larger alien crashing to the floor, unconscious. The other inmates stared in awe, their attitudes toward John shifting from derision to respect. Even the Thraxar guards, who had been watching from the shadows, seemed impressed by the display of strength and skill. They dragged Korg's limp body away, leaving John standing alone in the maintenance room, battered but victorious. Word of John's victory spread quickly throughout the jail. Inmates who had previously mocked or ignored him now approached him with a newfound respect, offering their support and solidarity. John knew he couldn't trust everyone, but he also understood the value of having allies in a place like this. Among those who reached out to him were Lyra, a cunning thief with a talent for picking locks, Zev, a former pilot with extensive knowledge of the jail's layout, and Graal, a hulking brute who had once been a gladiator. Together, they began to form a plan to escape the Galactic jail. They shared information, pooled resources, and carefully plotted their moves, all while keeping their activities hidden from the ever-watchful eyes of the Thraxar guards. As they worked together, John found himself forming bonds with his new allies. Despite their differences, they were united by a common goal and a shared determination to regain their freedom. Each of them brought unique skills and perspectives to the group, and John quickly realized that their chances of success were far greater as a team than they would have been alone. One night, as they gathered in a secluded corner of the jail to discuss their plans, John outlined their next steps. "We need to find a way to disable the security systems and neutralize the guards without raising an alarm," he said, his voice low but resolute. "Zev, can you get us access to the control room?" Zev nodded, his eyes glinting with determination. "I've been studying the guards' routines. There's a shift change early in the morning when security is at its weakest. That's our best chance." Lyra leaned in, her expression serious. "I can handle the locks, but we'll need to move fast. Once we're in, we won't have much time before they realize what's happening." Graal cracked his knuckles, a grim smile on his face. "Leave the guards to me. I've been itching for a good fight." John looked around at his team, feeling a surge of hope and determination. They had a plan, and they had each other. It wouldn't be easy, and the risks were enormous, but they were ready to take their chances. The night before their planned escape, John lay on his cot, his mind racing with anticipation and anxiety. He knew the dangers they faced, but he also knew that this was their best, and perhaps only, chance to break free. He thought of his comrades, scattered and possibly captured, and steeled himself for what lay ahead. As the lights dimmed and the prison fell into an uneasy silence, John made a silent vow. He would lead his team to freedom, no matter the cost. The Thraxar had underestimated him, but they would soon learn that he was not a man to be trifled with. He was a soldier, a survivor, and he would not rest until he had reclaimed his freedom and his life. The dawn of their escape day approached, and with it the promise of a new beginning. The stakes were high, but John was ready. The breaking point had been reached, and now it was time to fight back. The night air was thick with tension as John and his newly formed team prepared for their escape. The mess hall, which had been the scene of John's recent victory over Korg, now served as the staging ground for their rebellion. John felt a mix of anxiety and determination, his mind racing with the details of their plan. Every step had to be perfect. There was no room for error. Zev, the former pilot, had meticulously studied the guards' routines and the layout of the jail. He knew the exact timing of the shift change, when security would be at its weakest. As the team gathered in the shadows, Zev whispered the final details of their plan. "We have a narrow window," Zev said, his eyes scanning the room. "When the shift changes, we'll have about 10 minutes to reach the control room and disable the security systems. Lyra, you'll need to pick the lock on the control room door. Graal and I will handle any guards we encounter." John nodded, his gaze shifting to each member of his team. "Once we're inside, we need to move quickly. Graal, you'll take point and deal with any resistance. Lyra, get that door open as fast as you can. Zev, guide us through the corridors. I'll cover our rear." Lyra, the cunning thief, gave a confident nod. "I've got this. That lock won't know what hit it." Graal, the former gladiator, flexed his massive arms, a grim smile on his face. "Let's give these Thraxar a taste of their own medicine." With the plan set, they moved into position. The mess hall was quiet, the other inmates asleep in their cells. The guards, confident in their control, patrolled the corridors with an air of arrogance. As the shift change approached, John's heart pounded in his chest. This was it, the moment they had been preparing for. The guards switched shifts, the heavy doors of the mess hall creaking open. Zev led the way, his steps silent and sure. The team followed, moving like shadows through the dimly lit corridors. They reached the control room without incident, the door looming before them like a final barrier. Lyra stepped forward, her nimble fingers working quickly to pick the lock. John and Graal kept watch, their senses heightened. Seconds felt like hours as Lyra worked, the tension in the air almost palpable. Finally, with a soft click, the door swung open. "Got it," Lyra whispered, a triumphant gleam in her eye. They slipped inside, the control room a maze of consoles and monitors. Zev immediately went to work, his fingers flying over the controls as he bypassed the security systems. Alarms that would have alerted the guards were silenced, cameras were looped, and doors were unlocked. John felt a surge of hope. They were doing it. They were really doing it. Just as Zev finished his work, the sound of heavy footsteps echoed down the corridor. A group of Thraxar guards, alerted by some unseen cue, was approaching. Graal positioned himself by the door, ready to defend their position. The first guard rounded the corner, his eyes widening in surprise at the sight of the escapees. Graal moved with the speed and precision of a trained fighter, taking the guard down with a single powerful blow. The other guards rushed in, but Graal and John fought with a fierce determination, their movements coordinated and deadly. Zev and Lyra continued their work, ensuring that the path to the hangar was clear. John's mind raced, the adrenaline of the fight sharpening his focus. They had come too far to fail now. "Go!" John shouted, as the last of the guards fell. "We have to move, now!" They raced through the corridors, the path to the hangar illuminated by Zev's precise directions. More guards appeared, but the team moved with a fluidity and purpose that left their enemies reeling. John felt a sense of camaraderie and trust in his team that bolstered his resolve. They were more than just prisoners. They were a unit, working together towards a common goal. As they burst into the hangar, the sight of the ships filled them with a renewed sense of hope. Zev directed them to a small, agile craft, perfect for their escape. They boarded quickly, sealing the doors behind them. Zev took the pilot's seat, his hands moving deftly over the controls as he powered up the engines. The Thraxar guards, now fully alerted to their escape, stormed into the hangar. Blaster fire erupted, the sound deafening. Graal and John returned fire, buying Zev the time he needed to get the ship airborne. The engines roared to life, the ship lifting off the ground with a surge of power. "We're clear," Zev shouted, his voice filled with triumph. The ship rocketed out of the hangar, the stars stretching out before them. John felt a wave of relief and exhilaration. They had done it. They were free. As the ship soared through space, leaving the Galactic jail far behind, John allowed himself a moment of reflection. They had faced incredible odds and come out on top, but their journey was far from over. The universe was vast and full of dangers, but for the first time in a long time he felt truly alive. John looked around at his team, feeling a deep sense of gratitude and respect. They had trusted him, fought alongside him, and together they had achieved the impossible. The future was uncertain, but they would face it together. With a renewed sense of purpose, John took his place beside Zev, ready to navigate whatever lay ahead. The Galactic jail was behind them, but their adventure was just beginning. As the adrenaline from their escape began to fade, the reality of their situation set in. The cramped cockpit of the stolen ship was filled with a tense silence, broken only by the hum of the engines and the distant beep of navigation systems. John sat beside Zev, who skillfully piloted the craft through the vast expanse of space. Behind them, Lyra and Graal checked their makeshift weapons and gear, their faces set with determination. "We need a plan," John said, breaking the silence. He turned to face his team, his eyes scanning their faces for any signs of doubt. "We're not out of danger yet. The Thraxar will be after us, and we need to stay one step ahead." Zev nodded, his eyes focused on the controls. "I've set a course for the outer rim. There are less patrolled sectors there where we can lay low and figure out our next move. But it won't be long before the Thraxar realize where we're headed." Lyra, the resourceful thief, leaned forward. "We need to find a safe place to hide, somewhere they won't think to look. I know of a few abandoned mining colonies in the outer rim. They're off the grid and rarely monitored." Graal grunted in agreement, his massive arms crossed over his chest. "We also need supplies, food, water, and better weapons. If we're going to survive out here, we need to be prepared for anything." John considered their options, his mind racing with possibilities. They had made it this far by working together, and he knew that their unity would be their greatest strength. "We'll head to one of those colonies," he decided. "Once we're there, we can regroup and come up with a more detailed plan. But first, we need to make sure we're not being followed." Zev adjusted the ship's course, taking a series of complex maneuvers designed to throw off any potential pursuers. As the stars streaked past the viewport, John felt a renewed sense of hope. They were free, and they had a chance to build a new future, but they needed to stay vigilant. Hours passed as they navigated through uncharted space. The ship's sensors remained clear, but John knew better than to let his guard down. The Thraxar were relentless, and they wouldn't rest until they had recaptured their escaped prisoners. John's thoughts drifted to his comrades, who were still out there, possibly captured or in hiding. He made a silent vow to find them and bring them to safety. The ship finally emerged from hyperspace, and the view of the abandoned mining colony filled the viewport. The colony was a collection of dilapidated structures clinging to the surface of a desolate asteroid. It was a grim sight, but it offered the seclusion and cover they desperately needed. Zev skillfully landed the ship on a flat expanse near the colony's entrance. As the engines powered down, John turned to his team. "Stay alert. There might be others here, and we can't afford any surprises. Let's secure the area and find what we need." They disembarked, their footsteps echoing on the metal surface of the landing pad. The air was thin and cold, a stark reminder of the colony's abandonment. Lyra led the way, her keen eyes scanning for any signs of danger. Graal followed closely behind, his massive frame ready to confront any threats. Inside the colony, they found a series of interconnected tunnels and chambers, many of them in disrepair. Dust and debris covered the floors, and the air was filled with the musty smell of decay. But there were also signs that the colony had been used recently. Footprints in the dust, discarded supplies and makeshift beds. "We're not alone," Lyra whispered, her voice tense. "Someone's been here and they might still be around." John nodded, motioning for the group to stay close. They moved cautiously through the colony, their senses on high alert. As they rounded a corner, they came face to face with a group of ragged-looking individuals. The newcomers were a mix of different alien species, their clothes tattered and their faces gaunt with hunger. "Who are you?" one of them demanded, a wary edge to his voice. John stepped forward, his hands raised in a gesture of peace. "We're escapees from the Galactic jail. We're not here to fight. We just need a place to hide and regroup." The leader of the group, a wiry alien with sharp features, eyed them suspiciously. "Escapees, huh? You're either very brave or very stupid to come here. This place isn't safe. We don't have much of a choice," John replied. "We need supplies and a place to stay. If you help us, we can help you. We have skills and resources that could be useful." The alien considered this for a moment, then nodded reluctantly. "Fine, but any trouble and you're out. We can't afford to take risks." With a tentative alliance formed, John and his team set about making the colony more secure. They worked alongside the other inhabitants, repairing structures, setting up defenses, and sharing what little food and water they had. It was a fragile existence, but it was better than the alternative. Over the following days, John got to know the other inhabitants. They were a motley crew of survivors, each with their own story of hardship and loss. There was Zara, a former engineer who had been stranded after her ship was destroyed, Bex, a smuggler with a knack for finding hidden resources, and Rax, a medic who had once served in a prestigious hospital before falling on hard times. Together, they began to rebuild a semblance of community, each contributing their skills and knowledge to improve their situation. John felt a growing sense of responsibility towards these people. They looked to him for leadership, and he was determined not to let them down. One evening, as they gathered around a makeshift fire for warmth, John addressed the group. "We've made it this far because we've worked together, but we can't stay here forever. The Thraxar will eventually find us, and we need to be ready to move when that happens." Zara nodded, her face illuminated by the flickering flames. "I've been working on restoring one of the old mining ships. It's not in great shape, but it could get us to a safer location if we can find the right parts." Bex leaned forward, a sly smile on her lips. "I might know where to find what we need. There's an old salvage yard not far from here. It's risky, but it could have the parts we're looking for." John looked around at the faces of his newfound allies, feeling a renewed sense of determination. "Then that's our next move. We prepare for the journey, get the parts we need and find a new place to call home. Together we can do this." The group murmured in agreement, their resolve strengthening. They had come together under desperate circumstances, but they had forged a bond that made them stronger. As John looked up at the stars, he felt a flicker of hope. The journey ahead would be fraught with danger, but with his team by his side, he was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. With a sense of purpose and unity, they set their plans into motion, each step bringing them closer to a new beginning. The Thraxar had taken their freedom, but they would not take their spirit. Together they would carve out a future, no matter the odds. The day had come for their bold expedition to the salvage yard. The air inside the mining colony was filled with a mixture of anticipation and trepidation. John stood with his team in the central hub, going over the plan one last time. Every detail had to be perfect. Any misstep could mean the end of their fragile alliance and their lives. "All right, listen up," John said, his voice calm and steady. "We're heading to the salvage yard for the parts we need to repair the ship. This mission is critical. Stick together, stay alert, and watch each other's backs." Zara, the engineer, nodded. She had been working tirelessly to identify the necessary components and had a detailed list in hand. Bex, the smuggler, had scouted the route and identified the best time to make their move. Graal and Zev were ready for any potential conflict, their makeshift weapons at the ready. The journey to the salvage yard was fraught with danger. They moved under the cover of darkness, using the rugged terrain to their advantage. The cold, barren landscape of the asteroid was both a blessing and a curse. It provided cover, but also harsh conditions that sapped their strength and morale. After several hours of careful navigation, they reached the outskirts of the salvage yard. The place was a sprawling maze of scrap and derelict ships, remnants of past battles and forgotten expeditions. It was eerily silent, the only sound the faint hum of distant machinery. Bex led them to a concealed entrance, a hidden pathway she had discovered during her reconnaissance. They slipped inside, their footsteps silent on the metal floor. The yard was a treasure trove of parts and equipment, but it was also a potential trap. They moved cautiously, aware that any noise could attract unwanted attention. "Stick to the plan," John whispered, his eyes scanning the area. "Zara, you and Bex find the parts we need. Graal, Zev and I will keep watch and handle any trouble." The team split up, each member moving with purpose and precision. Zara and Bex began sifting through the piles of scrap, identifying and collecting the components needed to repair the mining ship. John, Graal, and Zev took up defensive positions, their senses on high alert for any signs of danger. Minutes turned into hours as they worked, the tension mounting with each passing moment. John's mind raced with contingency plans, ready to adapt to any situation. He knew they couldn't afford to be discovered. A firefight in the salvage yard would draw the attention of the Thraxar and other potential enemies. Suddenly, a distant clanging noise echoed through the yard. John's heart leapt into his throat. He signaled to Graal and Zev, and they moved silently towards the source of the noise. As they rounded a corner, they spotted a group of scavengers, their eyes wide with surprise and hostility. "What are you doing here?" one of the scavengers demanded, raising a makeshift weapon. John stepped forward, his hands raised in a non-threatening gesture. "We don't want any trouble. We're just here for some parts. If you let us be, we'll be out of your way in no time." The scavengers exchanged wary glances, their leader eyeing John suspiciously. "This is our territory. You don't get to take anything without paying a price." John's mind raced, searching for a way to defuse the situation. "We have supplies, food, water, we can trade." The leader seemed to consider this, but before he could respond, another scavenger spotted Zara and Bex working nearby. "They've already taken some stuff," he shouted, his voice filled with anger. The situation escalated rapidly. The scavengers advanced, their weapons drawn. Graal and Zev stepped forward, ready to defend their team. John knew they couldn't afford a fight, but he also couldn't back down. "Enough!" John barked, his voice commanding and firm. "We're not here to steal from you. We're all just trying to survive. Let's not make this any harder than it needs to be." The leader hesitated, his eyes darting between his men and John's team. Finally, he lowered his weapon slightly. "Fine. Take what you need and go. But if we see you here again, there won't be any more talking." John nodded, relief washing over him. "Deal. We'll be out of here in no time." With the tension diffused, Zara and Bex quickly finished gathering the necessary parts. The team regrouped, their eyes constantly scanning for any signs of further trouble. They moved swiftly, making their way back through the hidden pathway and into the open terrain of the asteroid. As they journeyed back to the colony, the weight of their success began to sink in. They had secured the parts they needed without bloodshed, a testament to their growing cohesion as a team. John felt a renewed sense of hope and determination. They were one step closer to their goal. Back at the colony, Zara immediately set to work on the mining ship, her hands deftly installing the new components. The others assisted where they could, their combined efforts speeding up the process. As the hours passed, the ship slowly came to life, its systems flickering and powering up. John stood back, watching Zara work with a mixture of admiration and gratitude. She had become an invaluable member of their team, her skills and knowledge crucial to their survival. As the final components were installed, Zara turned to John, a tired but triumphant smile on her face. "She's ready," Zara announced, wiping the sweat from her brow. "We can leave whenever you're ready." John felt a surge of relief. They had done it. They had a ship, and they were ready to leave the mining colony behind. But the journey ahead was still fraught with danger. They needed to find a new place to call home, a safe haven where they could rebuild their lives. Gathering the team, John outlined their next steps. "We need to stay alert. The Thraxar will be looking for us, and we can't afford to let our guard down. Our first priority is to find a safe location to regroup and plan our next move." Bex stepped forward, her eyes gleaming with determination. "I know of a few places that might work. It'll be risky, but we've faced worse." Graal nodded, his massive frame radiating confidence. "Whatever comes our way, we'll face it together." As they boarded the newly repaired mining ship, John felt a sense of camaraderie and purpose. They were no longer just a group of escaped prisoners. They were a team, united by a common goal and a shared determination to survive and thrive. The ship's engines roared to life, and they lifted off from the desolate surface of the asteroid. As they soared into the vastness of space, John couldn't help but feel a flicker of hope. The galaxy was wide and filled with dangers, but with his team by his side, he was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Together, they would find a new home, a place where they could build a future free from the chains of their past. The journey would be long and perilous, but they were ready. With a renewed sense of purpose, John steered the ship towards the unknown, confident that they would overcome any obstacle in their path. The mining ship soared through the uncharted regions of space, the stars a brilliant blur against the dark canvas of the cosmos. Inside the cramped cockpit, John felt a rare moment of peace. They had escaped the Thraxar's clutches and successfully obtained the parts needed to repair their ship. Yet the journey was far from over. They needed a new home, a place where they could rebuild their lives and stay out of the Thraxar's reach. Zev, seated at the controls, navigated with practiced ease. The former pilot's knowledge of the galaxy's less-traveled routes had been invaluable. As they traveled, John used the time to bond with his team, strengthening the ties that had formed during their shared hardships. Each member of the group had proven themselves capable and trustworthy, and their diverse skills complemented one another perfectly. Lyra, ever the resourceful thief, spent her time modifying the ship's systems to improve its stealth capabilities. Her nimble fingers worked quickly and efficiently, a testament to her expertise. Graal, the formidable gladiator, kept a vigilant watch, his presence a constant reminder of their collective strength. Zara continued to maintain the ship, ensuring everything ran smoothly, while Bex provided valuable insights into potential safe havens. "Found anything yet?" John asked, joining Zev at the front of the ship. Zev nodded, his eyes scanning the star maps. "There's a planet in the Draxus system. It's mostly uninhabited, but there are a few abandoned settlements. It might be just what we're looking for." John considered this. "What's the catch?" "The planet's atmosphere is harsh, and the terrain is rugged," Zev replied. "It's not an easy place to live, but it's off the radar. The Thraxar wouldn't think to look for us there." John looked out at the stars, contemplating their options. The promise of safety outweighed the challenges of the new environment. "Set a course for Draxus," he decided. "We'll make it work." As the ship altered course, the team gathered in the main hold to discuss their plans. The atmosphere was filled with a mix of anticipation and trepidation. They were venturing into the unknown, but they had each other, and that gave them hope. Bex spread out a makeshift map of the Draxus system. "There's an old mining settlement here," she said, pointing to a location on the map. "It's been abandoned for years, but the structures are still intact. It'll give us a starting point." Zara nodded thoughtfully. "We'll need to modify the structures to withstand the harsh conditions, but it's doable. We'll also need to find a source of food and water." Graal cracked his knuckles. "I'll handle security. If there are any threats, we'll be ready." With a plan in place, the team prepared for their arrival. Each member took on specific tasks, working together seamlessly. John felt a sense of pride and camaraderie. They'd come a long way from the grim cells of the Galactic jail, and their unity was their greatest asset. The journey to Draxus was uneventful, a welcome reprieve from the constant danger they had faced. As they approached the planet, the harsh beauty of its landscape came into view. Rocky terrain stretched as far as the eye could see, dotted with the remains of old mining operations. Zev guided the ship to a safe landing near the abandoned settlement. The air outside was thin and cold, a stark contrast to the controlled environment of the ship. They disembarked, their breaths visible in the frigid air. "Welcome to our new home," John said, his voice carrying a note of determination. "It's not much now, but we'll make it ours." The settlement was indeed in disrepair, but it offered the basic structures they needed. The team split up, each person taking on tasks to make the settlement livable. Lyra worked on securing the perimeter, setting up traps and alarms to warn of any approaching dangers. Zara began repairing the structures, using salvaged materials from their ship and the settlement itself. Graal and Zev scouted the surrounding area, mapping out resources and potential threats. Days turned into weeks as they transformed the abandoned settlement into a functioning base. The work was grueling, but their progress was steady. They constructed shelters, set up a reliable source of water, and began growing food in makeshift greenhouses. Each challenge they faced only strengthened their resolve and unity. One evening, as they gathered around a fire for warmth and companionship, John reflected on their journey. They had escaped from the Galactic jail, navigated through countless dangers, and found a place to call their own. They had formed a family, bound not by blood but by shared experiences and mutual trust. "We've come a long way," John said, looking at each member of his team. "We've faced impossible odds and come out stronger. This place, harsh as it is a new beginning for us. We'll build a life here, free from the Thraxar's tyranny." Lyra smiled, her eyes shining with determination. "We're survivors. No matter what comes our way, we'll face it together." Graal nodded, his expression fierce. "We've already proven we can handle anything. This place will be our fortress." Zara added, "And we'll make it a home. Not just a place to survive, but to thrive." As they sat together, the fire casting warm light on their faces, John felt a profound sense of gratitude. They had turned the tables on their captors, fought for their freedom, and now they were ready to embrace a future of their own making. The journey had been arduous, but it had forged them into a formidable team, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. With the stars above them and the promise of a new day dawning, John knew that they had not only escaped the Galactic jail, but also the shackles of their past. Together, they would build a future filled with hope, strength, and unbreakable bonds. The adventure was far from over, but with his team by his side, John was ready for anything.